ప్రేమ స్వరూపులారా, విద్యార్థులారా,
Welcome to InSAIde Scoop, a podcast that brings you practical servings of Swami's sweetest teachings. Our guest today hails from the small but powerful island of Singapore, is the Asia Pacific Head of Risk Management for Regulated Businesses at Amazon, and an active young adult in Singapore, regularly leading and singing bhajans. Welcome, Brother Kunal.
Thank you very much for that very humbling introduction.
Very happy to have you here. So as usual, we're going to begin the episode with the segment called Third Speed Samsara. As you know, that entails a series of questions that I'll ask you, and your responses should be quick and entertaining like the third speed of a bhajan. And given that you're someone who is found constantly singing bhajans, like every minute of every day, we expect great things from you for this segment. Okay? No pressure. You have 5 seconds to think of a response. But you're not limited to 5 seconds in your answer. Question number 1, spell successful backwards.
Luffsus.
Second question, 3 names that come to mind when I say success.
3 names that come to mind when you say success. Jack Welch, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela.
Very nice list. How would you describe the word success to a 4-year-old?
How would you describe success to a 4-year-old?
Yeah.
Happiness, joy, laugh, smile, enjoy, be enjoying yourself.
Very nice.
Enjoy yourself.
Your response to someone who says being a housewife or a sevadal or house husband is not success.
Why?
Is that all?
That's enough to get them thinking, I guess.
Nice and succinct. And if they're like, why not?
But why? How? Why? Like, why is that not success? What's the definition of success?
Right.
How are they defining success?
Your response to someone who says not everyone is destined for success.
I'd query that.
You kill me with the why. You're going to say why again, aren't you?
I'd query that. Not everyone's destined for success. I'd query that.
Nice. Cool. Very nicely done, Kunal. So Kunal, let's jump right into it. As someone who's always been driven by data, facts, statistics, I mean, you're the Excel man. I thought you'd be best suited to discuss some of these recent trends I've observed, okay? And that is that the world we live in has established various benchmarks or barometers for success. Grades, academic qualification, professional rankings, LinkedIn, social media followers, and then there are the various organizational lists like the Forbes 30 under 30 list, and there's really no end. In your opinion, are these benchmarks important?
Yeah, I think we have to acknowledge that to society they are important, right? They're an indicator of professional success, and we as society have been conditioned to think that that defines success because of the qualities and skills that such lists imply that an individual has, right? So if somebody has made the list, he must be very smart, he must be very hardworking, innovative, etc., etc. Now, in my humble opinion, I think it's definitely one measure of professional success, which, by the way, is only one kind of realm of success, I'd say. But even this one particular measure, I think, has its fair share of limitations, right? If, a couple of them would be, number one, it draws comparisons with others, right? Which is endless, right? And I think it should be drawing comparisons versus yourself yesterday. So how you're performing today versus how you did yesterday. The second limitation, right, is that it focuses very much on the outcome and it doesn't account so much for the process. It also doesn't account for the differences in circumstances, right? So you could have somebody who has, say, exam phobia,
Right.
and is not able to perform in exams, but maybe academically actually very good.
Yeah.
Right? Or should be considered very good. Could have somebody else who's mentally challenged, right? But the person, and somebody who's mentally challenged who does relatively well given their circumstances, but they may not be, equally recognized. So there are definitely limitations to this particular measure, but society does look at it as a measure.
Right. Okay, that's very insightful. Your view is essentially that it's one way of measuring success, but it can't be used exclusively. I mean, because if you think about it, it makes sense. Surely the success of our 70 or 80-year lifespan can't be dictated solely by 30 years of professional hustle, right? As you pointed out, these benchmarks don't really take into account the fact that a person may be abusive, an alcoholic, depressed or lonely. And your view is actually quite consistent with a recent article that highlighted how many Forbes under 40 individuals have been charged with various criminal offenses.
Oh, wow.
So they made it to these lists, but they've been, found fraudulent, charged with scamming, money laundering, bribery, and some of them are serving prison sentences. So these definitions of success being fame, fortune, innovation, compounded by these lists, which seem to be getting younger and younger every year, are they selling ambition and drive in a way that encourages us to fake it till you make it, or encourages taking shortcuts and this any cost attitude, which as long as the ends justify the means, we must go for it, So I guess my next question is, if that is not success, okay, what is? What does success mean to you? What indicators would you use to measure success?
I think success can mean different things to different people. And I think that we as individuals need to define it for ourselves. But to me, success is someone who is genuinely happy, right? And what do I mean by that, right? I think obviously people need to find out for themselves what gives them genuine happiness. But research does suggest that it revolves around having good relationships, good health, having a sense of purpose, having gratitude, etc. Right? And if I take me, for example, contributing to others' success, right? And whether that may be a student at school or somebody in their life, right? A mentee, for example, that, gives me genuine happiness, right? So that for me would be one of the criteria of success. But again, I think it's down to people to define. To the second part of your question with regards to indicators, right? Again, individuals will have their own measures or metrics to look at whether they're successful. But I think a couple could be, number one, am I of good character, right? And, Swami says the end of education is character, right? It's also one of the 7 habits of highly effective people, right? Which is start with the end in mind, right? So what do you want your obituary to say? Right? They're not going to be talking about how many hours you spent in the office, etc. They're going to be talking about you as a person, your character. And Swami also says, right, first, I quote what Swami says. He says, first, one must be trained in the technique of peace and happiness. These do not depend on the outer, the external, the visible objective world. It is not enough if students secure high ranks in the class and earn a good name. They should work for the progress of the society and the nation, and thus bring a good name to parents, join good company, speak good words, cultivate right vision, and pursue education that will build your character. This is what I expect from you.
Those are high expectations.
Right. Indeed. All right. So that's around character. So that's one kind of potential metric. Another one is, one that I suggest we ask ourselves, have I been the best that I can be? Right? And this is in all respects, right? Whether it's work, whether it's school, whether it's relationships, whether it's in the kitchen, right? Have I been the best that I can be? And that doesn't necessarily mean being top of the class or a top performer at work, but just being the best that you can be as an individual, giving 110%. And I think continuous learning and development is a key kind of component of that. So that's a second metric. And maybe a third one I'd look at is, am I at peace? Right? With all that we as humans have to contend with in this day and age, especially when thrown challenges like a pandemic, unemployment, uncertainties. I would say that being able to maintain your peace and remain equanimous should be considered a success, right? But these are a couple of...
So when you say peace, do you mean like being content?
Being content, absolutely. Right. Yeah, it ties in with gratitude, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, ultimately, I think it's for us to decide like how we want to define success and what metrics we want to use. The research obviously does have suggestions, and we all will have our perspectives. But yeah.
Okay, Kunal, I think you may be onto something, because there is research to suggest that despite progress in economic and social development, citizens in developed countries are less happy than citizens in less developed countries. And so higher standards of living, better healthcare, economic growth doesn't equate to greater happiness. And this is what studies call the Easterland Paradox. And it states that happiness and income are positively correlated. Okay, but over time, happiness does not increase when a country's income increases. So essentially, there's only so much happiness money can buy. And if we look at those benchmarks we were talking about earlier, the indicators we use to measure personal success is similar to how we measure a country's success, wealth, economic growth, etc. So doesn't this echo Swami's message on ceiling of desires, in that more desires feeds unhappiness? So how does ceiling of desires then impact success?
Yeah. So the assumption here, I suppose, is that success is defined as genuine happiness, right? And ceiling of desires is certainly not conducive for happiness, and hence success. And, we can illustrate that with an example, right? So if we take parents, or some parents, their first desire, right, with a child is they want the child to get into a good school.
Right.
Right. Once that desire is fulfilled, they then want them to be top of the class. Right. Again, comparing against others. Right. Then, wow, he's a straight A's kid. We must get him into a good university.
Right.
Right. Harvard MBA, get him a good job, earns a good salary. Wow. Now see, all the girls want to marry him. Like, let's get him married.
Yeah.
And then that gets fulfilled. And then, of course, every other conversation is about, I'm waiting for the good news. When are the kids coming?
Right.
Right. So you can clearly see that it's an example
I sense some personal resentment coming through.
You can clearly see that once the desire is fulfilled, it's endless, right? There's always other desires. So it's a classic example of how desires breed unhappiness. Brother Arvind also, I recall seeing in one of his videos that he talks about a happiness formula,
Right.
which he'd gathered from a friend studying at the Institute of Higher Learning. And the formula is effectively that your happiness equals the the desires you fulfill divided by the desires that you have.
Okay.
Right? And given that the desires that you have is the denominator, technically, if that is zero, so if you don't have desires, then your happiness is infinite,
Wow.
given that you've got zero as a denominator. So that was quite a powerful formula, and you should certainly link to that video in the podcast notes. And Swami, of course, Swami has said that in the Ramayana we find the example of Ravana. He was highly educated, very rich and powerful, but despite all this, he brought about his ruin. Why? Because he could not control his desires. He lost his discrimination due to his evil desires, and he could not recognize what was good and what was bad.
But let's be real. This is easier said than done, having fewer desires so that you're more happy and therefore more successful. Especially when the world, social media, advertising keeps pressuring us to succumb to their definition of success. Traveling the world, money, status, rank, fashion. We can't say these barometers don't matter because we are part of a system that uses it. It's the rules of the game. We have to do well at school, secure a good job, maximize our potential. So how do we bridge the gap between the way society perceives success and how we define success? And can we realistically achieve success the way society perceives while staying true to our values? How do you do it? Because I know you to be someone who embodies Swami's teachings constantly, and yet you are extremely successful in the material world. Tell us your secret sauce.
It's all
the magic.
It's all obviously a large part of it is Swami's grace. There's no question about that. But just on what you were saying around society's perception of success, and succumbing to that, I still think that it's about and it should be about how we define success, right? And what society believe is success should matter a lot less than how we define success for ourselves. So I think that's the most important thing, and that's something that we all must take time to do. Right? But having said that, for those that are playing the game, so to speak, I think first and foremost, we must pray to Swami to give us the strength to withstand the various temptations that get thrown at us in this world. And there will be tests, right? A myriad of tests. So I think that's the first and most fundamental piece. But second of all, if we do want the Lord's grace, right, we focus on what will please the Lord, right? And it takes effort. So if I give you examples, right? Personal examples of how I stay true to my values. By Swami's grace in university, we had won an entrepreneurship competition in Hong Kong.
Okay.
Right. And the next round, or the very final round, was to represent Hong Kong at a regional final 2 to 3 months later.
Right.
So we had to up our game, because obviously this was a bigger stage, and wanting to win it, we had to do something different. So one of the things that my team had suggested was, we can tell them that we've started the business and pretend that we've raised this much money and got some customer interest, etc.
When actually you haven't.
When actually we didn't actually walk the talk.
Right.
I put my foot down, pushed back, and said that we can't do that. We can certainly walk the talk, right? So we can actually start a business and do some pitching, etc. And then talk about it, right? Because we don't want to be fabricating a story. We probably have more experiences through that process to even share as part of our pitch, which would even make it, more stand out. Exactly. So, they obviously eventually agreed to put in the effort, and we did start the business, and try to get some funding, etc. So that obviously gave us a better chance, and with that effort, grace was received, and we very fortunately won the regional final.
Amazing.
Right. But it's the little things that kind of staying true to yourself, to your values, while playing the game, competing. Swami will take care of the result. So I think we've got to focus on that. Another example is that having been in the corporate world for 13 odd years, I've never drank, right? I don't drink. So it can be a little bit of a challenge, some may think, right?
Not networking and such.
Networking, social engagements, etc. But I think one is those are my principles, and I stay strong to those, right? I don't drink, and I explain why if I need to. And people can respect that. People do tend to respect that. And if they don't, then you find other ways to engage with them socially, right? There's so many other ways. You find other interests, some are interested in sport, you talk about sport, you play sport with them, food, you go for a coffee, it could be anything, right? So there are definitely alternatives to succumbing to the peer pressure of having to compromise on, what you believe is right. So, those are a couple of examples.
And you say that certain companies respect the fact that you have principles, right? Like Amazon says have backbone.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. One of the leadership principles at Amazon is to have backbone. Yeah, correct. And speaking of companies, HSBC, for example, courageous integrity is their most important value. So it's not just us as individuals that need to stay true to our values just for our sake, but to be able to enter the corporate world and these companies, they look for that. They want to see that you exemplify those values, right? Google, one of their core values is you can make money without doing evil. Yeah. Right?
That's a great point, because it can be difficult to do the right thing. It can be scary, but I think that's the only way you find the right people around you. When you stay true to yourself, you'll actually find people who want that kind of people, and then it flows.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's what companies are looking for as well when they're interviewing you. And then perhaps one final example worth sharing is with regards to the work-life balance, right? And the perception that it's kind of face time and the number of hours that you put in at the desk, and you need to be seen to be working very hard, etc. From day one, this is something that I've kind of looked at quite seriously, and I've always wanted to ensure that I protect my personal time, right? Because there's so many other things, so many other interests, right? Like, whether it's singing bhajans, or whether it's, playing instruments, etc., or playing sport, right? Whatever it may be, right? There's just so many other things that you want to be spending your time doing. So I challenge myself to be able to succeed within those working hours, right? And finding ways to do more within those hours, right? And it's something that has fortunately worked. You don't necessarily need to be at the desk and be seen, doing that. And to be honest, managers even respect that. They will actually ask if I'm okay to take a call at 7:30. In which case there are times I cannot, because there's somebody waiting on the squash court to play. So I think that's something that's worth kind of thinking about as well. And again, not succumbing to expectation or to societal norms or perceptions.
Fantastic, Kunal. And in case we haven't been convincing in our ideas of what success could look like, there's this quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, an American essayist, philosopher, someone who's highly regarded, that basically summarizes everything you've highlighted in this episode. He says, to laugh often and much, to win the respect of the intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the beauty in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know that one life has breathed easier because you have lived here. This is to have succeeded. Thank you so much, Kunal, for that exceptionally empowering and practical take on success. You exemplify how we can be in the world and yet not of it. Dear listeners, it's now time for some prasadam pills. 1. Success is genuine happiness, and there is data to support this. How empowering is it to know that each of us are the only judge of our own success, no one else. 2. Some indicators of our success include our peace of mind, character, quality of our relationships, and our sense of purpose. 3. It is easy and natural to be tempted by the luxuries of the world. But Observe where this desire stems from. What insecurity is this desire trying to fulfill? And having satisfied that desire, are we truly happier? Or did it just give birth to another desire, leaving us just as unhappy or unhappier than we were before? 4. When prayer is a habit, success is a lifestyle. Although it may be difficult and require conscious effort to navigate the world that doesn't necessarily prescribe to our values, don't underestimate the grace that protects and propels you. Have courage that when you invest in Swami's principles, he is compelled to guarantee returns in divine timing. Until next Friday, happy scooping!